You know, Providence promotes native landscapes through education, advocacy, and collaborative action. That means we're out there. We're out there influencing. We're out there creating outreach programs, school gardens, stewardship opportunities that are what's left of our natural areas. And just anything you can think of, tabling events or athletic programs. Be out there. Want to do everything we did last year, build on it for this year. And we cannot do it without the help from membership. So folks who haven't got bored yet, or maybe you don't have enough time, or maybe think you should use this, you learn by doing it. You don't have enough time. I'm only asking for 1 hour a week. You give us 1 hour a week, we can make it work. Give us whatever you can, we'll make it work. Let's see, the other things going on coming up. Michigan, see, we're going to have an updated plant sale. Let's see. I will be talking to him next week, but he has a lot of open dates. So I'm hoping I maybe having 2, maybe a spring and maybe a fall. And we can find a plant share with one of those. The exchange. Other things coming up. Let's see. In March, our next program is our next March meeting is going to be landscaping for birds with Roseanne. Check. Fertilize, birds and limit. Does she have a store in Grosse Pointe? Otherwise, we hope to, we're going to have member yard tours again this year. I'll be putting out a email on that asking for volunteers to host their yards. At least once a month, or 1 each month. Have a couple stewardship volunteer days, volunteer stewardship work days. One here will be at the EIC. Done a lot of nice things for our chapter. We want to get back to it. We hope to have some other work days that may be a school garden. And Rosin's natural areas, if you pick one. Things like that. Other you mentioned maybe pop up, maybe plant shares. That's a cool thing. We can have that coming off on our winter sowing project. Building little baby seeds. Share those out, get those really to people. Let's see, and I hope to start seasonal seed collection this year. This will feed into our 2026 seeds community program. You see, we had pretty good donations this year. We had, I think, 49 different species. So hopefully we build on that for next. Yeah, seeds throughout the year. And I'm open for suggestions, what you want to do, what you want to see. We'll have another John Blair prairie tour. For that. I missed most of the stuff last year, so I'm anxious to get back into it. That's all I have. Lisa, do you have anything? I'm president this year. Vice president. Let's see, who new members do we have here?
We have a couple new secretaries.
Yeah.
Helping the position. Katie's to be our grants chair. She may be online. Suzanne and Katie are our new secretaries. And Julie is our. And then we have we can introduce the old people too. Not that you're old. But they
No. Gotta go away to catch up.
I guess.
I'm Derek Schaefer, was the membership chair last year. I'm going to be continuing to pass that along to Julie as she's. And I am currently web chair, last year as well. This year.
Like to give some kind of information, sign up sheet right there.
I'm Jordan Fisher. I am
Scott, Michelle?
I'm Scott. I'm a treasurer. I keep the ship afloat.
Hi, I'm Shell. I work on accessibility chair, so I work on creating hybrid meetings and handling the tech side of it. For those in the room, we've been having a little bit of complaints with the audio dropping. When you're speaking, please speak loud and as clear as you can. The microphone is here and it is pretty sensitive. We may be also having issues with our internet connection tonight. There isn't a whole lot I can do about that. Unfortunately, I'm sorry.
And I'd like to thank our hosts. You're welcome. Thank you. For allowing us to be here. I'd like to introduce Jonathan Parker. He is the visionary and the force behind the Seeds Community Program out in Washtenaw County. And the Seeds Community Program would be a perfect fit for what we do here in Wayne County. Rick's excited to hear about it.
Sure. Ready to go? Okay, cool. So, is this loud enough, do you think? Will folks throw rocks at us? Quiet? Give me a thumbs up if you want louder.
Alrighty, can y'all hear Jonathan on the call?
And should I stand here or?
We have camera visual from about where you're standing over to about where the whiteboard is, so you can walk.
Which is my inclination. Hi there. Bob, when Bob and I were talking, when Bob was asking strongly for me to come and chat, he mentioned maybe talking more about philosophy, a little bit of philosophy and how we organize the program and all the weird thoughts that are in my head as I'm trying to make decisions about what we should do and how we should organize and how we should scale. I might talk about scaling a lot. And so maybe folks can give me a suggestion if I'm talking too much about that stuff, and I can get right into the series and talk you through all the pictures, many pictures of milk jugs and all sorts of other things. And I can stay as long as people want. This picture just arrived in my mailbox like 2 days ago. I had a graphic artist walk through the program, and this is the way I kind of think of the program. So we're collecting seeds. We are planting in milk jugs or in trays. We're up potting sometimes, and we're definitely working together as a community to bring that natural community into our environments, right? So seeds is both a metaphor and, a real thing. A metaphor for how do we start a thing that maybe the community, either our human community or our social community, could grow and maybe heal from. So I'll use those metaphors intermittently throughout the whole thing. So who am I? I have a bunch of computery, mathy stuff as my background. I have a day job, and at least for maybe one more year. And then I'm gonna do this stuff for the rest of my life, I guess. So that means environmental restoration. That means a lot of invasive species removal. I did a lot of growing at home that might have been the first year, where I think we ended up with, like, I had like 5 species. After listening to Bill Schneider talk about wild type and how he grows seedlings grows plants from seeds. That was a lot of years ago, 8, 9, 10 years ago. And the first year we tried to do this series, most of the seeds were collected by me because I had learned to grow them over 4 or 5 years. So I had wild geranium growing out there. Like, oh, that's seeds. Why do those look different? You know, a few weeks after I've collected them and that sort of thing. And I just went through a few species every year, growing 3 or 4 species new and putting them in my yard, maybe getting rid of a little bit of grass. And after 4 or 5 years, I'm like, there's sort of patterns in some of these plants. And how come that yard over there looks so lush at a certain time of year and mine looks so empty? I didn't have asters and goldenrods under my trees. Right, so I was missing a whole set of species, and learning that took another couple of years. And oh, there are asters and goldenrods that live in the shade. I didn't know what those were. I had no idea. So wild type and spreadsheets, and now Flora also is locally. So what I'm trying to describe before we get into the details is this is all about learning, getting your hands in things, and finding other people who also want that kind of experience. Right? So enough about that. Man, I could just stare at this picture. We are aligned with the seasons. We are trying to follow nature's patterns. And I'll also mention, once we get into the basics, I will talk a fair bit about what we are not trying to do. We're not trying to be a nursery, for instance. I'm not keeping all of your plants, because I don't think that works on a larger scale. And what I'm really interested in is something that the community can do and learn from, and that we can then share with anybody else who wants to participate en masse, based on what the community wants to do and how much they are interested in. And then we can focus on this as much as you want in terms of pictures throughout the series and examples. This is my first graphic, right? So we collect seeds in the spring, the summer, and the fall, or autumn. We are doing a bunch of work in the winter. You're going to be doing a winter sowing activity, right? So that's the milk jugs, a little bit of soil. We also do indoor growing, and those events happen mostly in February, meaning the seeds have all been in the refrigerator, they've all experienced winter in a fridge, and we are going to invite anybody who's got big windows or a little greenhouse or grow lights. We have a fair number of folks who have been doing, for instance, vegetables at home, and they come in February and plant these indoor trays, and their Michigan seeds have already experienced winter in our fridge. So they are ready to grow. I'll talk through that series of events also. So we're doing quite a bit in winter in terms of cleaning the seeds and then getting them into containers to grow. And then by the time spring comes, a lot of our seedlings are starting to grow or not grow. And the more people you have, of course, growing different species, the more resiliency you have. So if all of mine died because I forgot to put holes in the bottom of my jug, but other people's did remember, or they just had a slightly better luck, then we can share. Because a few milk jugs goes a long ways, right? Depending on how many seeds you put in. The first year we did this with Bob, volunteers did all of my containers because I was yapping the whole time, right? Running my mouth the whole time. And I had a butterfly milkweed jug with 135 seedlings. I don't know anybody who needs 135 if they're doing a little whole thing. So I took my 20 or 30. Most of them survived. Somebody else had to pick from the 100 that were left over. They don't all work that way, right? But that's the example that really stuck with me. And then, of course, we're putting stuff in the ground based on what your folks want to do and what projects you have working. Let's see, this is a lot I've already talked through, growing together, giving back to nature, sharing pretty much every step. And I will talk about reciprocity and honorable harvest later. So there's a lot on this slide. honorable harvest, to my interpretation, is a way of thinking about how we take from the world. It's meant, as far as I understand, for indigenous peoples, as talking about taking from nature. It feels very natural to me to think about that, also about how we take from our human community or human groups, how we take from the park, how we take from our neighbors, and how we give back to all of those sources of life and energy, health, calmness, wisdom. So I really try to think about that a lot. We work with Mathai Botanical Gardens and Wild Ones. We've built relationships with those folks. And it's really important to consider what they are able to give before we start taking, right? And reciprocity is sort of built into that. And I'll do my best with some of these words. Right, reciprocity is thinking about the whole, thinking about a healthy relationship. Again, not just taking, not just thinking about the stuff, not just thinking about the little, you've always wanted cardinal flower, and oh my God, you've got cardinal flower. Like, it's a little bit more important that we have a relationship and we are sharing and thinking about how we're going to take from that pile of gold or sparkly things. Right, so reciprocity is about taking care of each other. And if we are doing that on average, all of us will be taking care, including nature. So trying to think about that in the best way that I can is one of the ways we are making decisions. Feel very strongly that public organizations or some of these big groups, they should be using some of their resources to support the broader community to do these broader goals. I think that about the nurseries. I think that about the restoration groups who are focused on particular little rectangles on the earth, right? I think about how they treat their neighbors. That's really important to me, and so I sort of expect that I expect that informing relationships with these groups. Sort of my basis for, are we gonna do good stuff together? Part of it is to think about each other and to support each other. Almost all the events that we do are donation only. Donate as you can. There's no fees for any of our events at this point. We have go back there, I might. We have to give guidance because otherwise people don't know how much what value things have, a little pile of seeds. Does anybody know if that's worth $1,000 or $2? If it took 10 hours to collect and process or 50 minutes, right? Nobody knows. So, and I'm feeling more and more strongly that we need to give good guidance so that we can support the rest of the community and so that things aren't dependent on one person who happens to be able to do this without getting paid. I think that's pretty important to sort of build that in to the reciprocity sort of agreement of the group. And as folks join the group, be thinking, that 150 species of seeds that we have on offer this year didn't come for free. There was hundreds of hours of volunteer collecting, sharing, giving, and then feeling whole after they've grown awesome things on the back end, right? That's a big trust relationship. Okay, so maybe I'm doing too much here. So, but we want everybody, right? Not just the folks who are retired, not just the folks who have money in the bank. We want everybody to be able to grow nature, have this experience, and to feel whole by it. And so that means all the events are free, right? If you don't have resources, if you don't have money, you come, you grow as many things as you want to. And if you need help uppotting or growing things for your school garden, we have lots of volunteers who would help do that. Be happy to. I really strongly believe that because we're humans, we've been part of nature, that it's really nurturing and good for us to be in it. So we should be building those kinds of environments or offering them to the folks that we interact with. And scale. As we're designing the series for individual events, I'm not doing any of it. I don't want to do any of it for 5 or 10 or 15 people. Right? I want to figure out what events we can do for as many people as want to come. And so you have to go slow before you can scale up to bigger numbers. You have to have people that are invested, you have to have organizations that are invested and willing. That is really slow process and will be absolutely different for every community, right? You'll have different opportunities depending on who you're working with. If you have a space with a fridge, certain things are easier, right? If you have people with knowledge, obviously there's a whole bunch of things that are easier, but you still need a community with skills. And that takes a few years. If you've never done winter sowing, you are not gonna know what you're doing the first year. And you'll have some successes, and you'll have some failures, and you'll learn better, and then next year, and then by 3 years, you can probably stand up and talk about winter sowing to other people who are coming for the first time. But again, that's a slow process, right? So that idea of scale, thus finding spaces who can scale, I think is really important. All right, maybe I'm talking too much. We are not a nursery. We are not a source. Don't come to us for a whole bunch of seeds for your acre, right, or for your half acre. That's not what we're doing. And I'll mention specifically who we are focused on in priority order later. We're not a store. I don't think we have a single expert or professional, no matter what you think I know. I had never done this for a living, right? I didn't go to school for any of it. So everybody that's involved is either, well, just normal folks who have been now involved for a few years, or we happen to have some folks who don't mind coming once or twice a year after their day job, which is sort of nature stuff. We aren't really doing garden design. We are not trying to do the fancy, hard to grow species. And if the community wants to do a thing, like big series like this, the community has to decide to do it. It's not about one person, like being sort of a superhero doing everything. If we're going to do something bigger, we must do it together, otherwise it doesn't have sort of lasting potential, as far as I'm concerned. So I try to use all of those things and wait for the community and for folks to say what they're interested in, and then figure out what the opportunities are. Principles. So designing something that scales, basing as many inputs as possible by asking people, what do you got? Do you have milk jugs? Do you know a coffee house? Right? Do you know a place who uses a lot of milk? Whatever. Do you know a dentist? Dentists are good for milk jugs, for jugs. And this upskilling of all of the people, it's really critical. Right? It doesn't matter how much one person knows. How can I talk to 50 people or work them through this process? You can't. You have to have a whole bunch of interested folks who are also upskilling along with you. Yeah. This last one, it's sometimes really easy to think about our activities as we're focusing on the milk jug. These seeds, we're growing. We're cleaning the seeds, right? We've got to get all of those purple cone flowers out of the seed heads so we can grow them. But a lot of people who come, they're not there to work. They're there to experience first, to decide if they fit or to realize that they fit. And so that's more a personal, that's a human interaction, less than doing work, right? So we certainly have folks, right? Wonderful folks who would now show up and do work. But that wasn't the first set of things that we did with almost everybody. First, it is an experience. They're exploring. They don't know much of anything. They don't know where the seeds are in all your grass. That's a green plant, that's a green plant. Like most people don't know. So there has to be an experience first before you're necessarily expecting everybody to do a bunch of work and produce more plants. So you really, for me, it is almost always, who are these people coming in? What do they know? What are they interested in? For the first 2 or 3 or 5 visits, maybe it's just what are they interested in right now? And maybe later we end up doing a lot of work. But that first part is really important. And I would say the same is really true about the organizations that you're going to interact with. You hope that they're helping, you hope that they get excited, you hope that they allow you to go onto their property and collect seeds. All of that is the same, at least in my mind. I hope I'm doing it justice. And I want to go through too much more of this. I kind of have said a bunch of bits. I talked about inclusivity, private organizations. I had sort of cycled through almost all of the restoration-y type groups in Ann Arbor. And I was continuously surprised by how they are really pretty narrowly focused. They have 100 acres or 1,000 acres, and they're not thinking beyond the border. They're thinking about the particular priorities that that organization or that level of people have been given. And so continuously surprising to me that, wow, Ann Arbor is so big, I thought this group was covering all the bases. And most of them are pretty narrowly focused, right? Their job is not to deal with the whole city or the whole county. Their job has to be narrower. So realizing that's the truth and figuring out what you can do together, again, that's part of reciprocity, and that's part of sort of building trust, figuring out what can be done together, where you're not imposing too much against what they've been told their jobs are supposed to be. And I probably was just super naive 10 or 8 years. And this, I'd say this a lot, I still don't feel, I'll talk about big numbers later. We probably did 25,000 plants last year with about 1,200 containers that other people grew, not me. And it's still a drop in the bucket. We're still not either ecologically or socially relevant, I don't think. Right, so it takes a long time, and buildings to scale and building an organization where there's enough trust and respect, super, super critical. I hope you'll consider that as best you can. Collaborative framework, I don't think I've said all of these parts already. You can check it out if you want online. So the focus of the activities are mostly starting with this urban suburban person who's just a normal person. Maybe they got a day job. Maybe they have a little teeny plot of land. Maybe they're helping a teacher and they've never grown anything at all, right? They're not farmers. They didn't grow up as, a farm family. So primarily we're focusing on milk jugs. I mean, I gotta say, Bob's the one, we should do winter sowing. I'm like, what's winter sowing? Had no idea, right? 2 years ago, had no idea what winter sowing was. Also primarily focused on neat and tidy species. I feel like this should be a term that everybody else has already been using, but it's the neater type, wild geranium, cardinal flower, purple cone flower, some of the little asters, right? Not big and gangly, not kind of leggy, not ugly and flopping over into the neighbor's yard, but sort of appropriate, especially if you grow 10 or 20 in a group, right? That's what we tend to focus on for most of those new folks who don't know much. Go to the neat and tidy list. Go to the shade list, the neat and tidy shade list, the neat and tidy wet list. If you're doing a little rain garden, go to that first, and you're much less likely to have, do we have any common goldenrod? I don't think we have, we do have common goldenrod this year. Bee balm, right? Bee balm's cool. The bees obviously love it, right? But it's kind of floppy and ugly. So if you have 1,000 friends, probably a great choice. If you've only got a little teeny 10-foot square, maybe bee balm shouldn't be in your garden, right? Especially if it's the first year you've ever done it. So in terms of that neat and tidy, helps for them and also helps the neighbors. Pleasing groups, neighborhood approachable, we tend to sort of start there. If you want to go wild and crazy with your front yard, glorious, we got all kinds of speeds for that too. But focusing on those people first. And then more and more, but this is a slow process. Do you have some friends? Do you have a little classroom? Do you have a church? Do they happen? There's a whole bunch of gardeners there that haven't done a project together in ages and they would like to. Bring your whole group. Do milk jugs together. The church down the street from me grew 1,500 plants for their little new front yard garden. And that was just 5 or 8 of them. They had kind of fun over a couple of weekends. And then, of course, we had to put everything in the ground. But it was all enabled by the series, right? They all showed up on one weekend. They went home with 20 milk jugs or 25 milk jugs or something. And then we came in up-potted also, right? And we all had reusable, not reusable, used plug flats. So they went home with, I don't know, 38 or 50 plant trays. And they watered them for a month or 6 weeks, and then we had a big party and put them all in the ground. And local organizations, the same thing. Your folks who are doing rain gardens, right? If you had a couple of folks who were volunteers and who wanted to do a few milk jugs, it's a pretty easy way to get a couple of hundred plants for that new rain garden for the city, for the county, for the whatever. And of course, public lands, all the leftover seed, I don't want to keep that stuff, right? We're not a seed library. So at the very end of, not the very end, yeah, the very end of February, all the remaining seed gets offered up to the public lands that we have relationships with. Mostly that's Washtenaw County Parks and Rec. That's the Freeman Environmental Center as part of the Ann Arbor Public Schools. That's a few other places where some of us particularly work. But again, almost all public lands. I have the control. We're not going to go into this a lot, but it's one that I think about in my mind. Seed collection is an exploration. We've gone out with tons of kids and some grad students and whatever. And it's just going out to experience nature. I'm not really expecting them to come back with bags and bags of single species nicely in a bag, right? That's not the objective. The objective is to be out in nature and to share and to feed their wonder, right? That's the objective. And they'll come back or they'll take it into life. But we're not most of the time. And the same in the seed room when we are doing cleaning, a lot of the people who come for 1 or 2 times at minimum, they are exploring. They don't know what the seeds are versus the chaff. They don't know what to do with the fluffy seeds versus some of the chunky stuff, cardinal flower or whatever. They have no idea. They don't know any of the patterns. So rather than giving them a do this for us, do some work, it is almost a free-for-all. And we help them as much or as little as they are liking to, right? If they want to jump into things, we let them jump into things. It'll be fine, right? If they have questions, then we build trust first. Winter sowing, same things, and then a bunch of projects. Any questions yet? I think we're almost done philosophy. Any questions about any of that? Sir?
Yeah, I really hear the philosophical foundation. Very, very interesting. Really resonates with me. Is that available to tap into again?
These things?
I'm trying to take mental notes.
Oh, all of this is online. You can go steal anything you want. Yeah, steal away. This is all a Google. Yes.
I'm going to repeat the question for the people online who might not have heard it. The question in the room was, is the slide about philosophical foundations available for review later? And the answer is yes. The entire presentation is available online and we will provide information on how to access that in a little bit.
Yeah. Have I been doing okay? I've been seeing lights light up, so.
You've been doing okay. Yep, we've been getting some feedback.
A little louder.
That maybe it could be a little louder.
Okay.
Some of it is probably a connection issue. Some of it is, you know.
I will do my best though. Certainly my kids tell me I'm plenty loud enough. So I definitely have it in me. Okay, so now I'm going to go through a gazillion pictures. You should just ask questions. Okay, I'm going to go through pretty fast because you're about to learn winter sowing. So this is going to be about like get the feel for what kinds of things we've been doing. Again, year 4. And I had been working with many of these organizations for about 6 years before that, right? So these relationships have formed over time. So a little short. I mentioned this a little bit. This is the picture I used for like 2 years, right? I had to create something so that I would understand, I could communicate with people what we were doing across the year. So we're harvesting seeds, spring, summer, and fall. That's been pretty haphazard so far. Really relied upon Wild Ones folks who already were in touch with what plants they had on their yards or they had planted, but had maybe never collected before. And only now are we getting to the point where I feel like I have a resource, a spreadsheet that is going to give me a little bit of information and could guide things. But the spreadsheet has taken a lot of my effort, to be honest. About 4 weeks ago, we had a person walk in with 45 species that I had never heard of before. So they weren't in the spreadsheet from the year before, and they're all crazy. I don't know where they're all, 40 of them were native, so some of them got chucked. We only cover native species in Michigan. And so the spreadsheet had nothing. It didn't have what color the flower was or how tall it gets or what stratification it needed, right? What does it need winter or not? Do you need to scratch it or not? Like, what do you do? I can't just throw them at people during winter sowing and hope, right? So do they need to go in the fridge earlier? So anyway, we're getting a lot better. Processing October through December, that means taking these bags of non-seed material and separating them from the seed material. So the sticks and the stems and the leaves, all of that, not all of it, but good enough, trying to remove that from the seed stuff. We do use a few tools for that, and I will show some. Then sowing, that's January and February. So it's either winter sowing in milk jugs, they didn't bring any, maybe I should have, or indoor trays, and you'll see lots of pictures of that. Then obviously we're growing things. As soon as the weather gets warm, obviously it's a lot easier to grow stuff. And your winter sowing jugs will start to grow when the weather gets warm enough and the seeds are like, oh, it's time to grow now. And then giving them away. And obviously these two overlap, right? So the beginning of spring, if you have wild geranium, you should be collecting seeds, right? If you have pussy toes, you should be collecting seeds. And you should also be getting rid of all the ones you still have in your jugs. So we do a number of different events, kind of if you have folks, and that's really common. So even though I was pointing at one particular person, we had a lot of folks, and me in particular, also. So this is, I'm not going to talk about it, but again, we're collecting seeds out in a prairie area. This is mostly exploration, right? How much little blue stem and big blue stem and Indian grass are people actually going to grow in milk jugs? Not much, not much. But it's really easy, and the prairie is really beautiful, and we've got them en masse. So in terms of exploration, it's a wonderful place, right? We're away from traffic. We're out in this space that we have been working, that I've been working. This is County Farm Park. And this is Sean Severance, a naturalist who's been really instrumental for me, at least, and really generous. And I think these are SEAS students. So these are University of Michigan SEAS students who came from one of their classes to do an environmental walk. And they're collecting certain species. We're putting them in paper bags, nothing fancy. Here's another one with, do I remember what this group is? Probably wild ones, actually. Probably seeds to community in that similar space. We have a number of materials, many of which have been taken from the internet, right, to show patterns. All the fluffy stuff has a pattern. All the asters and the goldenrods, it's a pretty common pattern, right? The milkweeds, they have a pretty common pattern. Pretty easy once you figured it out. I don't know what kind of aster this is, but I know how to process it. It's really easy, really, really easy. Coneflowers, really easy to recognize where the seeds are after you've done a couple of them. They're hiding in there in these spiky little bits, and that's where the birds go if you watch them too, right? They're trying to get inside there to get the seeds. And if you waited until this point, you're not gonna have too many, right? Let's see. I showed this though as an example about those patterns are some of the things that we're trying to share, not just collecting a whole bunch of seeds, right? Oh, my head is in the picture, isn't it? Forgotten that, sorry. Let's see, we don't have to go through that. There's a nice book back there that I just got, which has sections like this for species that are in Chicago or near Chicago. And again, if you, this is a goldenrod, but Joe Pye weed. There's 2 or 3 different Joe Pye weeds. I cannot tell them apart. I can't even probably remember them, and I definitely can't pronounce probably most of the Latin names. But having a few of these to compare, again, will help you start to get patterns. If you were to put 2 or 3 of these together, you could go out with a walk in that particular space, that County Farm Park area. Here's Indian grass. Here's big blue stem. Here's little blue stem. Yes.
What is the name of the book?
Wayne, it's right there behind you. Yes, that's the one. Thank you. So let's see. So they're videoing us, right? They're going to do this. Does that work?
Yeah.
You want to read it?
The book is called The Lake County Seed Collection Guide by Kelly Schultz and Dale Shields.
Yes. And this is a book that's actually, I'm sorry, these are PDFs. They're free and online. It is not easy to find though. Oh my gosh, those people, seriously, really painful. And the book was like $45. I use this in the seed room. Folks sometimes compare seeds, what they've got to what's in that book. This I take directly from the PDF. And the PDF, I'm sorry, there are like 15 PDFs. They weren't designed to be a book. So good luck when you go to the indices.
What exactly is a mama's boy?
Oh, I did look that up. I'm not sure I can remember. It has something to do with different seeds, I think, maturing at different times. And so these patterns are described at the beginning. And I don't know if that's exactly, but that's the idea, right? Is that different species have different patterns. And if you can start to identify the patterns, all of it becomes easier because there's a lot of species in Michigan, right? 250, probably easy, right? And so again, there's nice patterns. We've also made some materials. I haven't done nearly as much of this as I wish, but if you were going to collect 2 species, what would you need to know? When is this ready? If you've never looked at wild geranium, you probably have no idea. This is ready. This is not. If you take this and try to plant it, you won't get any wild geranium. If you collect this, if you collect this one, you also won't get any wild geranium because they're already gone. Right? So those patterns are really cool. Wild geraniums are a really easy one to collect if you get your timing right. And it pops in the bag, you know, while it's drying, which is really cool if you're just sitting there having your breakfast. Columbine is another great one, right? Really easy to grow, really easy to collect, one of the easiest ones to collect. But if you scatter them on the table, they fly like crazy and you'll probably never find them all. They're really silky. So those, I wish I had like 50 of these. I wish I had one of these for every neat and tidy species. So that people had them, one little sheet, kind of pretty, very instructive as possible. Most of these images were stolen from the internet, so don't report me. But we don't sell them, you can have them if you want them, they're online too. And if you want to make some more, that would be really cool, right? Washtenaw County has the same sort of plants that you do.
Maybe you can post a list of ones that you need done.
Maybe. You're getting there. So the rain garden folks have a bunch of spaces. This is Washtenaw County Water Resources. They do rain gardens, right? They do a big, huge, giant rain garden program, and they have some public spaces in the same light. They, for whatever reason, they teamed up with the Ann Arbor District Library, and 45 people showed up. I was shocked. Why aren't we doing that as much as people want to come? I'm really confused by it, right? 45 people from the library wanted to just come and walk around in this prairie with Katie, who's really amazing. I would go just to hang out with Katie, but that's like an opportunity. And it didn't really matter if we collected seeds that we were going to use and grow, right? Like that's 45 people who have now done that thing. That's pretty amazing. And if even 5 of those come back, or in 3 years they come back, that's a pretty big gift to the community, right? So looking for some of those opportunities and some of these great folks who have spaces, and it fits in with their mission already, right? They are supposed to serve the public, and they have these beautiful spaces, which frankly need a lot of help. There's a lot of buckthorn and honeysuckle in those spaces, right? So it's a win-win. Seed sharing, that was an activity that we had that Sean Severance had done for many years. And this is a horrible picture. I'm really bad about stopping and taking pictures. But eventually, in effect, it's all the folks like Wayne or Bob or some of you who have been collecting seeds and sharing them with your 2 or 3 or 5 friends, right? Or trying to give them away to your master gardeners. And you want to share and you want to talk about it. Just get together. Anybody comes who feels like, right? And maybe some of the leftovers go into your program. Again, a great opportunity. And we actually now do a seed walk. That's where the picture came from. We do a seed walk in County Farm Park before the seed share. Again, another opportunity to just go out into the prairie with a bunch of folks. A different organization, Adapt Community Supported Ecology, they did a seed collection and share, and they gave away a bunch of bare root tree saplings. right? Because you have programs where it's really easy to get. You can look up Adapt, they're really great. And they have a big volunteer component to their work. Washtenaw County Conservation District had for a few years asked their respective public folks to collect common milkweed. And then they had a partner who was processing that, and then that partner faded away for whatever reason, right? And they're like, would you process this for us? And we're like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with 2 gallons of common milkweed seeds. 2 gallons, that's what we ended up with, like 500,000 or something. But it was great, right? We learned a whole bunch, there was a whole bunch of things. And all of those seeds were given away at the end, either spread in public lands in different places that didn't have too much common milkweed, or were given away at a big public event, the Native Plant Expo. Just about how the barn formed. The barn is the old County Farm Park in Ann Arbor. There's the Britton family property, which is now County Farm Park, and there was a big barn there, big barn. And when they put in the rec center, the recreation center, the public space, they moved the barn to the side and mostly have been using it for storage ever since. So this used to be filled with storage, and now it's got some nice tables that were just, sitting in a room somewhere not being used. That's an awful lot of common milkweed, right? An awful lot, and then a whole bunch of seeds. So whoever wants to come, comes. The times are sort of publicized. I'm not super consistent, but we are meeting around once or twice a week. And then we have some folks who are coming almost once a week, and other folks that come once every 3 months. And they're all learning, they're all upskilling. And that is the way that we get to that big long list, 105 last year, 150 this year. And of course, the room is open. You can come ask any questions you want to at any point. You don't have to do any work. You can just come and ask questions or ask about your plant and what's about it. And maybe we get through seeds. Let's see, 6 more things. Oh, yeah. Anybody know what this is? No cheating. No, rattlesnake rescue? Probably, oh boy, Joe Pivot maybe. Probably an aster goldenrod. We use pretty simple tools. So we don't have any big machines. We don't have, what are they called, hammer mills. We don't have fan-based systems yet. So for the first year, all I used was this, literally. To get to that 30 species, that was the only tool I had. So I either separated by hand, my kitchen table, or I used a little sifter. If you've never done lobelias, for instance, they're really teeny, like dust. And if you sift them just a little bit, suddenly you'll see red, right? That cardinal flower, they look a little red. It's kind of amazing. You shift them on you. So that just takes experience, right? Just some having fun with it, trying to figure out what the seeds are, figuring out how you get your camera to zoom in, that sort of thing. Now we have slightly better, more serious ones, not cheap. So if you had somebody who can make this kind of stuff and get the screens the right way, but those were not cheap. Wild strawberry. If you haven't grown wild strawberry, pretty freaking cool. They look great. Wild geranium. Anybody know what this is?
Grass or something.
There you go. Good for you. Bottle brush grass, probably. Oh, and this one? This is another easy one to collect. Wood poppy. Wood poppy, bright yellow. Don't confuse it with the invasive one. Oh, do I have, am I wrong? Well, maybe I'm wrong. I'm wrong. Bloodroot? Okay, I'm gonna move on. I'm sure it's in the notes. Shoot. I'm the one who did this. So yeah, here's a bunch of seeds. Hey, look at all those seeds, thousands and millions. So this is kind of amazing, right? We talked about the bounty of nature, or I might have mentioned this phrase, right? It's really easy to go up to one New England aster and have way too many seeds to grow. Right? So there's a number of points in the series where you just automatically have extra. New England aster is an aster that grows to about this big. What are there, like 10,000 seeds on one plant? It's crazy.
10,000.
So if you were to just spend 5 minutes collecting, that's enough New England aster seeds for an entire program. Like really, no one else in the class to collect anymore. So just a little bit goes a really long way. And of course, this means there's a bunch of volunteers who've been gathering this sort of stuff. This is all of last year's pictures. We do talk about germination codes. Most plants in Michigan, no, not most. Yeah, most, 60% or something, have to go through winter. They have to experience cold and moist conditions, and then warming conditions, in order for them to decide it's good enough or safe enough to start to grow. Some of the grasses, they don't care because they can stay on top and then they just grow whenever they're touching soil and it's warm enough. So a lot of our seeds are C something. C30 means it needs 30 days of cold, moist, in the fridge, in sand with a little moisture. 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, and then there's a bunch of crazy ones. I try to ignore them, but other people want to grow them, so, we're learning more as we go. But most of them are C or not needing stratification at all. Seeds germinate, maybe A, B. So we talk about that. I love some of these pictures off of the internet. Wonderful folks have already grown them, talking about winter sowing. You can steal all of those from us. They're all out on the public spaces too. Nothing fancy here. You don't have to buy any of this stuff. Maybe a box cutter or some sort of device. I use box cutters. Maybe some soil. Having an organization with a little bit of money, you can buy some soil. That's pretty cool. But the seeds are free. The milk jugs are mostly free. You can use anything to put a little moisture in. What's the other part? I don't think I've shown any part of this that really costs very much money to set up. Right? And asking folks if they have any pigeon strainers that they're not using anymore. You got a lot of people in the county or maybe checking emails. So does anybody have any duct tape that is sitting around that hasn't been used in 10 years? Or popsicle sticks or old blinds that are broken? They work really great for identification. Most of that stuff is free. There's a greenhouse. You might know this guy. They might know this person. Yes, we know. I don't know. Let's see. So that's Mathi. They let us use one of their greenhouses sometimes. They don't charge us because we're connected to wild ones. And we don't leave anything after the weekend. We are not using this greenhouse space really like a greenhouse. It's a warm space that has water and soil, and you can get a little dirty, and you can fit a whole bunch of people in there. Perfect. And it's in the winter, so this is a heated space. They're always heated. They never get cold. So even when the sun's not out, the heaters are running because that's the way they run their operation. If you can find places like that, you might not be able to, but you do have a space, so that's pretty heated. I love this space because it's big. And I kind of have hopes that we can scale up to bigger numbers since we've got plenty of seeds. Even year 2, right? Year 1, when we only had 35 species, we could have done way more people growing stuff. We ran out of almost nothing. Right, so again, how much New England aster could we have grown? 20,000? I'm not joking, right? 20,000 plants from one collection, right? That's some of those are really easy. This is the soil that we use. $13 a bag to purchase it from a distributor. And the place we get it from, you have to buy it in lots of 30 or more. This is the same stuff that Mathi uses for most of their growing. So after 6 years of working with the county in that little barn space for 1.5 years. They're like, you keep bringing volunteers, you keep bringing the public in, you keep serving this number of people, we're happy to buy some soya. Right? Almost nothing in comparison to the work we've been doing. And of course, we gave them a bunch of plants last year. And I'll get to that actually. Let me go faster, probably running out of time. So the milk jugs go out in winter, you're gonna do a program, Bob will tell you all about that. Once the seedlings start to grow, either indoors or outdoors, then if you just want a couple of plants at home, then don't do up potting. Right? This is growing indoors, and I jumped ahead, I'm so sorry. Look at those little babies. Right, so what is this? Oh, purple, sorry, yeah, I knew that. And that's probably in my house. So they start to grow. I love these pictures where the seeds kind of still stuck. They're grabbing on, they don't want to let go. I just want to take off every single one. Anybody else? All right, let's see. Wild petunia. I killed at least 5 trays of those one year because I put them out too soon. Grow up potting. Are we no? We're still in. Yeah, we are. We're up potting. So if you just want a couple to grow, you don't need to do up potting. You can take it right out of your milk jug or right out of your tray. You can literally put them right in the ground, especially if you've been doing winter sowing. But if you want 50 or 100 or 300, then up potting is probably the way to go. Lots of different options for what materials you use. We get a lot of these. I purchased a bunch originally, and now we've been giving other old growers that are giving us their stuff. I haven't had to purchase in a little while. This is a little wild strawberry. Or actually a couple, 3 or 4. So up potting, this is, we all get together and, all right, so let's see. So last year, 1,000 milk jugs left the greenhouse. 1,000. And they all went to people's houses. And then if the spring came, and some of them started to grow. And other ones didn't grow for a long time or didn't grow at all. And so let's say 800 jugs were growing stuff. Mostly we had too many in the ones that grew for the person who was growing them. So if you bring back your jugs, even if there's just this number, maybe you have 100 jugs total, and you bring back 80 jugs back to this space. You take the ones you want and you up-pot them. I want 20 Rattlesnake Master, but gosh, I've got another 20 in the milk jug. You just kind of throw it in the community pool. You throw it in the pile and you're like, hey, want any Rattlesnake Master? There's a whole bunch. Oh, and there's some Masters and there's some Goldenrods and there's some other things. And you'll be surprised how many left over you have. Right? And if you are individually or close to individually, maybe even in clumps, up-potting them into bigger containers, you will have plenty of leftover. I don't guarantee it, but close. Right? So we have plenty of leftover seeds, we have plenty of leftover seedlings based on the ways we're growing. You know, again, steal things online or somebody go make better pictures, better flows, right, that you can share. Knowledge, more seedlings, all of these you can have too or make your own. I have some guidelines for that. Mostly those are PowerPoint that you just change pictures. Some people have their eyes closed. Really, really bad. If you can find a couple of people who don't mind taking pictures and getting everybody to smile, it's really valuable. I don't love any of these pictures because it's way more exciting than half the pictures look. But people up-pot the selection of species that they are interested in. Right? They're up-potting, well, you can see all the names, right? There's yarrow, there's Rattlesnake Master, there's Rose Mallow, whatever, right? Wild Bergamot, whatever fits their space. And again, the spreadsheets are helping you choose. And then, of course, we're giving them away. We're putting them in yards. Whatever fits your inclinations, right? These are actually Adapt people. So we gave them a tray from the Adapt folks, and I gave them a bunch of extras that we had left over as part of the series. And keep in mind also, when we get to the end of the up-potting sessions, we have tons of leftovers that no one wants. So tons of milk jugs with babies that look perfectly happy, no one wants to grow because they already took a whole bunch. What are you going to do with those? Again, they could go to a class, they could go right into the ground at a space. But again, connecting with those things, that takes a couple of years. And we have a different set of species every year, right? So it does take a flexibility and a little knowledge that you have to build up over time. This person got rid of all their grass and was going to replant. And that's a big leaf aster. This is really shady. Actually, that's a Norway maple. What is that? May apple. Big leaf aster, heart-shaped aster, probably some sedges from a nursery. This is the church I was mentioning. Oh, that's my boy, with the power tools. Another garden. This is my front yard. That's my driveway. That's a whole bunch of leftovers, mostly leftovers, that I decide to grow. I give or donate only to the public in my front yard. It's kind of amazing who shows up, to be honest. Yeah, isn't that the whole idea? All right, let's see. I don't really need to talk about that, but I mentioned the numbers, I mentioned the volunteers. I think that's the end. That'd be my last slide. It's not a great ending slide. I'm gonna go back. Yeah, I think it's more like 20. Because last year was more like 20. So this year, I don't know what any of you would be interested in asking questions about or talking about. This year, we're doing the same event at MathI this coming weekend. And we're now up to, and I'm not saying this to brag, because I still think it's a really little number. But the first year we had 35 species, mostly from me. I bet Bob could go collect 35 species pretty easily without thinking too hard, right? And he said they totally could. That's plenty of species to grow. But if you want to get people to help, that's the idea. The second year we had 105 species. We enlisted the Wild Ones folks who already knew about native plants or had a bunch growing, but had never collected or had never had a reason to, or had never really thought about giving to anybody else. I don't think we can afford that. I think that we should be using the nature that we are growing in our private little opulent spaces, and we should be sharing them with as many people who are interested. I think that's really important. So nudging the folks who have this love of nature to do a thing that is easy for them and could give the community benefit, that's half the job here, right? And then allowing other folks to pick up some of those skills so that they can have a love of nature too and have an intimacy with it. I think that's the job. So this year, 151 species, including that awesome dude who I didn't know what to do with all those extra species I'd never seen before. We're gonna have 200 people registered before we get to Saturday, I think. And 45 volunteers who might just come for an hour or two, or might come for all day. So that is a slow progression over 5 years. I'm kind of amazed at what's happening. The University of Michigan, some person I didn't know from a year ago said, hey, I have a native plant vending machine in the library at downtown Ann Arbor in the Shapiro Library. Can we partner with you? Would you share seeds? I'm like, absolutely. Do you want to publicize? Absolutely. Right. So finding those other like-minded folks and figuring out, building a little bit of trust and then building collaboration, that's a big part of the game. Maybe less about doing work. Think about that in my fit.
More public libraries are having seed libraries.
They are, because they're supposed to be serving the public, right? But it does take folks who know to provide them the seeds, right? Otherwise they have to buy them. And I don't mind buying, right? I've bought lots from Wild Type and TerraFlora and all kinds of other places. But it is it's quite a distant. There's way less intimacy with nature when you're just going to go out and spend money to buy stuff. I think it's much more valuable, much more enriching to do it the other way, if you can.
But with a library, if you're giving seeds away, probably then you need a sheet to take home with those.
Yes, and you have to have seeds en masse, and you have to have a relationship with them. Yes, you definitely need seeds. Yeah, and there's a bunch of examples in the back. Okay, should we keep going with questions? Bob? Any questions?
As Wild Ones, are you going to be getting into this?
Yes, February 8th, you can do winter sowing with Wayne County Wildwood.
We got, he got into a lot of pieces of the program that we're going to be building into. But, we go in 2025, we're looking for 11 line organization. Partner with it.
Wink, wink.
The collection, adventure. And, you know, I hope by 2026, you know, we gotta get the trades and everything, but, 2026, trying to get to the, artificial stratification that you're doing. You're not really saying, but we-
Looking for opportunities, right? That's part of the thing. So we get a lot of our trays from the plant installation people. Right, especially the ones that know about native plants. Where do all those trays go after they put the plants in the ground? They go in the garbage. They all go in the garbage. Nobody reuses them. Right, so if you can find some native plant installers or talk to your native plant nurseries, pretty easy to get trays that are very, very reusable. Especially if you train people how to get the plug out without destroying the tray.
Do they necessarily have to be native plant?
They do not.
Like they could be a landscape for.
Yes, absolutely. I have definitely found that the miscellaneous pile of pots, I'm not interested in doing that anymore. So. You can use any, you can use coffee cups or whatever you want to, yes. You, definitely people use, I mean, winter sowing, if you haven't, Facebook has a really interesting winter sowing original, I don't know. You just spend like few hours cycling through there, you will see a gazillion different ways to grow plants outdoors. Easy, easy, easy.
Tubs, like totes.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, yes. Yeah, some folks are like bedazzling their, anyway. Yeah, yeah.
Have you seen any of the ones where it's like, basically like a raised garden kind of thing, where they like do the timber frame and then you just take it all apart and
Yes,
have thousands, because you can do it like in bulk, you can get the space.
right, absolutely.
Lots of meaning with all, like you don't have.
And they're using potting soil too, right? Potting soil doesn't have very many seeds in it. Sometimes it does have a few, but most of the time it doesn't. So most of the winter sowing is using a potting soil mix that you bought. It's not using just plain soil. That doesn't mean you can't do it, but your soil probably has a lot of different crazy seeds in it, probably a bunch of stuff you don't want. So at least starting, we are using mostly, in the past, I have, when doing up potting, I have mixed a little bit of potting soil with my regular my garden soil. Mostly clay plus compost, and had very good luck. They won't look as massive. Oh, so far we have never used fertilizers either. So if you're just growing for yourself, you probably don't need them. If you want them to look sort of good for Memorial Day to give them to somebody else, maybe you want some. This year I'll probably use a little bit just to see if it's significantly different. But my little wild petunias versus feral flora's wild petunias, mine are very hardy. They're perfectly happy, but they haven't had any fertilizer at all. And of course, the potting mix doesn't have a ton of nutrients in it. So you don't need it. If you're just growing at home, you don't need any fertilizers. But again, maybe there's an opportunity there if you want to bring new people into the fold to have your plants look a little bit more robust.
Oh, from your milk jug to your, to a separate little planting container?
Up potting is many milk jugs, right? It's just a little teeny container. So the question was, what is up potting? When we are putting seeds in our container, our milk jug or our tray, we often have many seeds that are growing little teeny, and their roots will pretty quickly get intermingled, and you won't be able to easily separate them.
Do you want to go back to a graphic so people that are visual?
You are so smart. If only we had some graphics, huh? So this is not a great picture. Think more like this little teeny bit of soil has 40 seedlings. So not very much dirt per seedling. And they will actually kill each other, right? As they start to grow, a bunch of them will die.
So if you want only 3, you could literally reach in and take a hunk of seedlings and stick it in the ground, and you'll eventually get 1 per hunk. And maybe you can get 3 or 4 from 1 milk jug. But if that same milk jug had 50 seedlings, then effectively when you take that seedling out, it's like bare root. Right? The whole thing is dangling and there's no soil connected to it at all. If you give it its own little teeny container, think toilet paper roll size, then that seedling will be able to grow very nicely by itself at that point. So up potting is moving it from a very mixed, compressed situation into a space where it can grow freely and have enough nutrients to be successful.
Ultimately, you get more seedlings out of it then.
That you get, yeah, more plants because they're growing into something that you can immediately, that you can then put into the ground. And normally, yeah, and maybe I should have brought trays for if you haven't seen them.
You're scrapping.
Oh, yes. Love that picture. You need to come to all of my movies. Right, oh, that's a good call. But there's no seedlings growing in here, that's a little sad. So see this milk jug, maybe you get 1, 2, 3, 5, maybe you get 10 plants out of that, but hard to get them to survive once you put them in the ground. If we were to take them out a little earlier when they were still small, we could put them into a big tray of 40 or 50 plants. And then that tray is manageable to water, to take care of, right? So this is taking them out of there when they're smaller and putting them into a more disparate set of pots. That is up potting. And again, it depends on how many you want to grow. You definitely can skip it. If you only want 4 or 5 big leaf aster, milk jug. If you want 10, couple milk jugs. If you want 50, then probably up potting makes a lot more sense.
Or once you up pot and having trays.
Yeah.
How, I guess, what is the lead time on having to store the trays? Before you can have them, or have them outside regularly, or should they be covered or?
Yep, so definitely winter is a problem, right? If you're gonna have cold freezing nights, you need to be careful. Seedlings that are grown in winter sowing pots outdoors are quite hardy. But that doesn't mean if it doesn't freeze hard that they won't all die.
Yeah.
Seedlings that you've grown indoors are complete wimps. They will die from wind, they will die from sun, they will die from getting too hot or too cold or drying out. Really, really wimpy. There's nothing going on indoors that makes them hardy. And so the actual physical and chemistry of the seedlings has to change in order to survive outside. And that's quite a slow process. Hardening off is the phrase.
So like I do mine in my cold floor, but you do yours in your garage with.
I grow mine in my closet with grow lights from a pothead that didn't want them anywhere. Yeah, I'm not a pothead, they were potheads.
No judgment.
After you have put them into, so you took that little teeny bare root seedling, right? That might have a root that's like that long, if I'm thinking about my butterfly milkweed, and you put it into its own little container. Then it needs a time to build roots and to fill in that little plug section. That's what you're waiting for.
Yeah.
That's when the nurseries would sell it or give it away, because the root ball holds together, the plant is hardy. And you can pop it out and put it in the ground all in one little unit. If it falls apart, you've again really put those roots at risk, right? The only way roots work, the roots that you can see are not the working parts usually. It's the little teeny hairs that are actually connected to dirt and soil. Those are the working parts. And if you separate those from the soil by getting them roughed out and the soil falling apart, then you know your plant's gonna have a really hard time making it through the next couple of months in the ground. But in my mind, it's about a month or 5 weeks in that tray, that up-potted tray, before they're ready to be planted out into the ground. And likely with a little bit of fertilizer, that speeds up dramatically.
Yeah, I guess my question is more
Oh,
like
sorry.
along the lines of what sort of like protections do you have to have for them during that time of them growing?
Just watch for really freezing temperatures. Yeah, right. And so we do up potting in April and in May, depending on how big your seedlings are. Mostly the stuff you're growing in winter sowing containers are small. They don't start growing until it's quite a bit warmer, right, than the ones we're doing indoors. And I did sort of make some choices about design and schedule with Memorial Day weekend in mind. So the date that we do indoor growing in February is backed out from Memorial Day. Plants are ready to give away or sell. And that's what a lot of the nurseries do. They back out the times that they want the plants maturing, right? So if we up pot in April, the indoor plants, then they're ready for Memorial Day. That's in general the idea. Is that
Winter selling stuff, June-ish, probably be about the time that you have enough size. When you want to, the winter selling stuff. Dangers of cold weathers have. Heating up high and just increase your numbers. Or for whatever reason, you're not quite ready to plant them out yet, and you don't have space. You up high them, get a little more size on them, and all you have to do is just make sure the water. And maybe some, a little bit of weed fertilizer.
I shouldn't be answering winter sowing questions. It is.
Or if they're just crowded.
Yeah.
So again, winter sowing seedlings though are pretty hardy. So if they've got 1 or 2 sets of leaves, they're probably hardy enough to up pot. You don't have to wait, you certainly don't have to wait until they're this big. Right? But they're really hardy. They, and again, if you are gentle and have learned how to be gentle with them, have them in shade, let them reincorporate their roots, or you're taking them out as chunks, then, again, you have a higher likelihood of success. We can talk offline, let's get more specific.
We've got some knowledge as well here.
Yes. And no matter what I say, or Bob says, go figure it out. Right, because there are a lot of different ways to do it. Really, an incredible number of ways to do it.
They all work.
They probably all work, yeah.
Now, going back to your couple slides you had of plants, especially like the butterfly milkweed, it said use this right, oh, go back,
This number.
right there, yeah, use this one, this is right, this is wrong, this is just right.
Yeah, questions?
This is too late. So my question is this, that's typically when you're seeing them blow all over and
Yeah.
go off in the field and everything.
That's right.
Why is that one just right then?
Just right is the seeds, because they look brown like this
Okay.
versus inside they look white, they are viable. And nature is sort of hinting that, because when that particular pod starts to crack open, nature's like, we're done, job's done. And now we can start spreading them. Also, this is a giant mess and
Oh, yes,
horrible to
I
clean. But if you pick it right then, you can actually get all the seeds off immediately. I totally suggest that. Don't wait and just throw them in a paper bag. Separate the seeds right then. Or have an experiment. You can have a good time.
Have you ever done it with a nickel in the bag and you
Oh,
shake
yes.
it and?
Bucket of bolts is what we do sometimes call it.
And
Yes.
the kids love it.
Yes. And
Oh.
fire works great too if you're a little careful with fire.
That's how today I was like, how come it just?
Yeah, when you get, sorry, so the reason we're mentioning fire is because these, when they dry out, are very flammable. I don't know if you've heard of like burns of flour meaning make a cake with. That flour, when it gets into the air and is dry, is incredibly flammable, as is this fluff. Right, so. Take it home, I don't know, fireplace or a bucket, open up one and just let the fluff sort of spread and then throw it a match, kind of amazing. Maybe don't do it
I would
inside.
do it outside.
But once you get too many, then there's too much density and it doesn't burn very well. So, but do it, because boy, the kids love it. We had actually, so this is the second year we've been doing work with the Freeman Environmental Center, and a young lady, no names. A young lady, the second year we were working with them, came up and said, hey, last year, some guy did something with fire with this, and that was me, I was the guy. Can we do that today? And so we went outside and we're like, yeah, you go and clean them, you go put it into a bucket, and we'll go outside. So again, take advantage of their excitement, take advantage of their interest, and of course, sprinkle in other bits along the way. That's a good end. Thank you for bringing up fire. Thank you, everyone. Good luck. I'll be here as long as you like.
All right, do we have any announcements for the folks online before I close the Zoom meeting?
Well, Penny Danker donated a book, her very first book to the, maybe the second, I'm not sure. Her very first book, Doug Calloway, Bringing Nature Home. If anybody's interested in checking this out for a month or two, we return it at our next meeting. Has everybody heard of Doug Calloway? You read, Bringing Nature Home? Read it to her?
All right, for those folks online, I am gonna go ahead and close off the meeting as everybody is breaking up into small groups. If you have any questions or comments or concerns, feedback, please go ahead and email that to us at wildoneswanecounty@gmail.com. Thank you very much for the folks who provided feedback during the session. All equipment we use is donated and loaned, so we appreciate hearing feedback from everybody, and I look forward to seeing y'all at our next meeting. Have a great night, okay?
I'm sure. All of our, we're doing state of and then the.
He must be.